You're listening to the Heart and Soul podcast with Katherine Banco. I'm on a mission to celebrate breakthrough, empowerment, and shameless living in the lives of women everywhere. Join me and let's live unashamed together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to season 3, episode 26 of Heart and Soul. I am joined today by Rebecca Anderson.
Hey.
If you've been listening to Heart and Soul for all 3 seasons, then Rebecca was our very first guest ever on season 1.
That was like an exciting thing.
It was really exciting because we had only done one episode, just us two, and we're like, what the heck are we doing?
I feel like we've all come a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of different aspects since then.
Yeah, which we'll definitely talk about today, where life has taken us.
Yes.
But last time she was on, she talked about her ministry here in Wilmington called 514 Revolution, where they help basically bring women out of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, and then supply them with resources and prayer and redemption along the way.
Yes.
So this time we're going to pivot the conversation.
Right. Yes.
And
equally heavy topic.
Equally heavy, just as heavy. But we're going to, so Rebecca, just a background, Rebecca has been like a spiritual mom for me and mentor. So when we had our 2 miscarriages, Rebecca and David that's her husband, were like the first people at our doorstep and prayed with us and just let us be sad with them. And it's pretty powerful, just it's pretty powerful in grief to just be next to someone and not have to fix something, but just like be near. So that was Rebecca for us. And then she recently just experienced a loss, which I'll let you share about. But we've kind of just been on this last 2 years of crap together.
It's been a journey, and I think that was sort of my heart in this. Is just like, hey, we should talk about this.
Yeah.
As friends, we should talk about how our hearts have been impacted as friends, how the ups and the downs, and just all the things that go along with infertility and loss and hope deferred, that desire in your heart to have a baby, and how as women really we can help each other navigate those places, because I think that it's a place where we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And and
it's so common.
Right. And I think too, it's like from kind of the thing that was on my heart was like just that moment when you see your friend end up with the thing that you desire more than anything else. Like, how does that impact your friendship? How does that, because it impacts our hearts, right? Yeah. But just being honest about the places that we are sitting in, I think end up ministering to the relationship on a whole.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, for sure. So this will be really good for us.
Yeah.
Will you, if you don't mind, just like sharing your journey with infertility and what you've been through this last year?
Yeah. Actually, I have a son who is going to be 6 in August, and he is kind of emotional. Gosh, because like I was at his preschool graduation earlier today. But he was conceived naturally. We had to, like, when I was a little later, I guess, in life getting married. I was 30 when we got married, and so we, obviously, like, you want to wait a little while and enjoy just being the 2 of you and as a new married couple. But when we started to kind of turn towards wanting to have a family, I didn't get pregnant right away, and we saw some different doctors, and I ended up having to have like a little surgery to address some issues going on with my uterus. And then after about 7 months of that, we conceived Joshua naturally. And yeah, just the biggest blessing of my life. Next to my husband also, and Jesus. But so then when Joshua was around 2 or 3, we wanted to start trying again. And I think that probably there are more listeners than we even know that can relate to just what it feels like to ride that roller coaster every 30 days
Mm-hmm.
of oh, like we felt like we really gave it a great shot this month, and am I pregnant? And then when your period comes and it's like, no, you're not. It's just a constant like up and down emotional mess, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's really it takes a toll. I think on you mentally and emotionally, but then also recognizing too like what it does to your marriage.
Yes. That's
You
true.
know, do you want to like
No, I just think when you both yearn for something so much, it becomes almost like not sex becomes a chore by any means,
right,
but it
right,
becomes like a tool to get you to the next
right.
place.
Yes.
And
A
then
means to an
a
end.
means to an end.
We're
Yeah.
trying to accomplish a goal.
Yes. There's a goal
Yes.
in sight. And then when you're the woman and you get that negative test, and I only experienced like 6 months of negatives, but every time I got that negative test, I felt like I was letting Michael down or letting
Mm-hmm.
our marriage down. And then it was like my brain was so focused on that goal that I was like absent in other ways in our
Yeah.
marriage.
Yes. My husband has had. We've had similar conversations, and we've actually been through counseling because of it. And we're definitely on the other side of that in some beautiful ways. But he was kind of very honest with me when we first began to, because I wasn't getting pregnant, and so we felt like we need to go see a doctor that can help us with and this is with baby number two. That he felt like I was so focused on conceiving a baby that I really didn't care for his heart,
Mm.
in that season. And he's more of someone that will um not well, he doesn't do it intentionally, but he suppresses his emotions, and then they will um just erupt at the most inopportune times, and it's kind of like, what is going on? And realizing that, and then he realizes, oh, like I didn't realize that I felt this way
Yeah.
for so long. So now we have a big mess to sort of clean up. But yeah, having to sort of almost like hit the brakes, because his heart is important to me. His heart is more important to me than conceiving a baby, and he really needed to know that. So we've gone through that sort of journey, and then around this time last year, we sat with some friends who brought up the topic of IVF, and for a really long time we thought that was something that we just didn't think that we could do it. We didn't know enough about it at the time. We weren't really, I would say, fully educated on the process. But because we're believers, we believe that life begins at conception. And so it's very important to us that we steward that really well. And we weren't sure, like, is this science taking over for like what God does and all of those things. So we just kind of didn't really entertain that for a long time. And then this time last year, we sat with some people that brought that topic up to us again. And my husband was really the one that sort of led the way with those questions and wanting to investigate that. And that was a good place for our marriage to be in, because it for a long time up until this point, it was kind of like me in the driver's seat there. And so it blessed me tremendously that he wanted to sort of look into this process. So we found a great doctor in Raleigh, and who has just really honored our belief system and understands that we desire to steward life well. And so before we even sort of realized that, we were like on this train of in vitro fertilization, and a little bit overwhelmed by all of the things that go along with that, because it's a whole lot of medicine and a whole lot of appointments,
And in Raleigh. So
and
you're
in
doing a
Raleigh,
lot of traveling.
yes, and juggling of everybody's schedules, and a child that's in school. And I mean, I actually missed his first day of school last year because I was having to have a little surgical procedure done before we could begin the IVF process. So even, gosh, like I don't know if I get emotional like while I talk about it, it's because I'm still processing all that's happened in the last year. But we went through egg retrieval, I think, in September, and after the genetic testing, we ended up with one embryo, and we were just really feeling like that was an answer to prayer because we didn't want to be in a situation where we had all like multiple embryos and I'm 40 and what like what are you gonna do with all of these babies? So we were really just kind of like, yes, Lord, like there's just one, you know. And the other side of this story is that there have been so many like just prayers and words over our family having a little girl.
Very specific words.
Yes.
Like even from Michael, he had a dream one night and like dreamt her name and then texted y'all the next day and was saying, I don't know if his name means anything to you, and you're like, that's our daughter's, that's the name we were going to name our daughter.
Yes, her name was Elise, and so that really kind of blew us away because it's like, all right, Lord, like you are intentionally talking about her to other people, so where do you put that in this journey? I mean, it really, those types of things I think just foster hope, right, in your heart that the Lord hears and sees you and he intends to fulfill the desires of your heart. So yes, like, and then when we ended up with this one embryo, and then because of the magic of science, they were able to determine the sex before we even did the transfer, and it was a little girl. We were just like, yes, like felt so much like, you know, this is it. This is the promise that the Lord has given us, and it's coming. And so we decided to wait through the holidays to do the transfer, but did transfer it in January of this year. And it's kind of those initial, like, you know, first weeks of pregnancy, and part of me I think was like, I don't really believe it after all of this time has passed, and
after seeing so many negatives for so many years, you're like,
this is, you know, there was a part of me that just felt like it wasn't real. And so at 6 weeks I went to the doctor to do a checkup, and they can actually that's when we did our first ultrasound, and she was like, well, she's like, I see a little heartbeat, but she's measuring at 6 weeks and 1 day, and you're 6 weeks, you should be 6 weeks and 5 days. And I was just kind of like, okay, lady.
That's picky.
I was like, I'm not even like picking up what you're putting down, because you don't know about like what all I've been through to get to this point, and the promises that God has given me. So I'm just not even worried about it. And I drove home like, this isn't a problem. So when we went back, they wanted me to follow up a week later. We went back, and they looked at her and they were like, she has not grown at all since your last appointment. And that's when everything just felt like it came crashing down. So we called all of our people, our prayer warrior people, and our family together, and my husband and I had actually like booked a trip. We were supposed to leave to go to St. Croix this same day that this happened. So timing is like, okay, well, but we just decided that we were, and they were even preparing me, you know, like, if you can go on this trip, but we just want to make sure you can get to a hospital if you need to, and all of that stuff is just so overwhelming when you feel like you've been riding this wave of anticipation in a lot of ways, I think. So we decided to go in faith, just believing all would be well, and I'm grateful that we did, because everything was fine. We had a wonderful time, and I'll be able to always kind of look back at that memory and know that she was with us, like here on earth, too, while that was happening. We went back to the doctor again when we got back, and they were like, well, she's still measuring really small. Her heart is still beating, but she's measuring, much smaller than she should be. And when I was pregnant with Joshua, it was also sort of like a high-risk pregnancy. I had to go to the doctor every week to get checked. And I just had a moment after this appointment where I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to come back for a couple weeks. I'm going to, because of all the anxiety that goes into that and just the stress of it, the emotion of it. And I remember when I was pregnant with Joshua telling myself, like, if I had this to do over again, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't put myself in that situation every week because of the emotional toll that it takes on you. And so I told them that I would come back in 2 weeks and that they could check me then. And I just really threw myself before the Lord. And honestly, the peace that came in that season was so beautiful, because there was actually, I think it allowed for room for there to be joy in the pregnancy when, if you constantly had somebody's medical advice in your ear, I think it robs from that experience, right? So, yeah, I just declared life over her and asked the Lord for her to grow. And when we went back 2 weeks later, her heart wasn't beating. So, that's just crushing. I mean, you know exactly how it feels.
Yeah.
So I think even it was similar for you at one point in time, right? Yeah, your brain just does all sorts of crazy things, like, in that moment. I mean, I can't even tell you, like, what all went through my head.
Yeah, it's just a roller coaster of emotions.
Right.
What did it do for your faith? Like, how did it challenge, or I guess, what did your relationship with God look like that week after you were given that news?
I don't know if I can even answer that, because I don't think that I've ever been angry. And I've had thoughts of, like, I don't need to know why, because where does that get me? It doesn't really get me anywhere. And I've always been somebody that has seen the Lord as a good father. And I would say that in this moment, this is when your community of people sort of gather around you and hold up your arms, because you can't. But I'm not sure that I've even still, because process, like, well, what do I feel about God in this experience? I know that He has purpose for everything. I mean, that's part of what I spend my days, like, preaching to other women. And
right.
so it's like, I think that's something that I've recognized is, like, man, like, other people are watching me have to navigate this.
Yeah.
And how do I respond is going to continue to be encouragement to them, even though I'm devastated.
Yeah. I think for me, when, like, as far as my relationship with the Lord goes, every struggle that I'd been through in the past upon knowing Jesus, I felt like I was letting God down. And in this one, it was this weird shift in my heart where I felt like God let me down.
Right.
And He had never let me down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not Him letting me down. It was just like, that was how I was processing it.
Right.
And some advice that I was given was, like, wrestle with that. And, like, say that out loud to God.
Well, exactly. I mean, like, why would you literally give our daughter's name to a man in his dream if you didn't intend for her to live her days out here on earth?
Yes. And then if that wasn't your intention, what was?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's messy, ugly, messy.
What have you seen once you started in miscarrying and after you miscarried, what to you felt the most comforting and what felt the most hurtful after that from friends, community?
Oh, we kind of like did it. We were able to kind of get out of town almost immediately. We had some good distractions that were already on the calendar, and that was helpful. But I mean, Facebook people announcing like they're expecting
Yeah.
on social media, and I'm just like, you just feel angry, like, oh, of course you are, like like. And I think, even, why does this get to be so easy for certain people,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in my line of work,
Yeah,
with,
speak to that
yeah,
because
like, women that have absolutely no business having another baby, and I mean that in the best possible way. But when you are, I see women all the time that are abusing drugs and unhealthy, and here they are pregnant with like their fifth or sixth child, and they don't have custody of their other children, and it's just like, stab me with like 1,000 needles, because
mm-hmm.
it's so frustrating. And we would, I mean, you just know, like, we would raise this child like unto the Lord, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why does it get to be easy for them and not for me? Like, I've definitely had those thoughts. And so I realized too, like, if I realized, like, in the process of some of the really great distractions, like, man, like, I don't want to um not deal with this. I don't want to just, I could very easily get really busy and just tuck all this away inside of me and keep moving. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And so when we got back from our trip, I called my counselor, and I was like, I need to come in and like process this with you, because I think when you have never been through a loss of this magnitude, we're all young, like, we don't really know people that have died, like, our parents are still living, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's but it is a loss on that level. And I think that for women that have experienced it, I would say, like, don't diminish it, embrace it in the magnitude that it truly is, because a, I mean, a person died.
Yeah, and I've been through death and loss like in very extreme ways in my family. I mean, I watched my cousin die. That was
Mm-hmm.
intense. And and this it dying inside you is like a whole other level of loss because it feels like you lost a part of you.
Right, we did.
Yeah. And I think that often women are kind of taught to like do go and like just if one thing happens press on to the next thing.
Right.
And I think because of that a lot of the grief that should be processed immediately gets pushed down and then eventually it comes out in other ways and in a very possibly damaging ways to you.
100%. Yeah.
And so I'm really what I love about what you did is you jumped right into grief counseling
Yes.
because it is grief. And I think a lot, if you haven't experienced a miscarriage, then it's probably easier for you to just say like, I don't get it. Like you never met the person
Right.
or it was only 8 weeks. Like
Right.
who, like, what does that even, but it's just a whole nother level once you've like actually been through the process.
Yes.
So what have you learned in grief counseling?
And I mean, a number of things. One of the most like revelatory things for me was, my counselor said, I want you to like make a list of how you get triggered during the week, and then let's talk about the emotions that you felt, like, before, during, and after.
Mm,
Um, so one of the things was like a girl that I knew was pregnant. She kind of gave her announcement on Facebook, and I felt angry. And then I probably had anger towards the Lord because like I wanted to be able, there were so many people that knew our journey and knew what we had gone through and were kind of in that place too, but I never had that moment of getting to say like, finally, like our prayers have been answered. My counselor said that, he's like, in our culture, we're really taught to think of triggers as a bad thing. That we should avoid triggers, or if we get triggered, like head the opposite direction. And he said to me, he said, what if we flip that on its head and we view triggers as the Lord's way of showing us a place that he intends to heal? And I was just like, oh my gosh, that concept blew my mind because and so instead of like running from a trigger when it comes, we just embrace it. Now we don't go like seeking out to get triggered, but when they come, and they will, like I think even Mother's Day recently was something that I wasn't expecting. It's like, okay, the Lord is in that place with you, and he's going to bring healing to this place. And so that sort of helped me to be more at ease, I think, so that you're not like on edge, like, oh gosh, like I can sit with you and I'm not triggered by the fact that your baby is growing beautifully in your stomach, right? Like those are things that I think even through our friendship, just the Lord is like, he's in the midst of this, right? But a funny thing happened. We'd taken a lady sort of out of town in my work, and the place that we were taking her to is also associated with a crisis pregnancy center. And so we went into this little room to talk with her, and I guess it was the room that they like counsel people in. And there were all these little like tiny little squishy babies in a basket. And
wow. Like, okay.
like, okay, can we like put this away,
Yeah.
and my girlfriend, then they had this whole display of what a baby looks like in the like gestationally at 3 months, 6 months.
You have to share what happened during that too.
Yes.
That's
so I'm like, funny. Can we please like just put this so I don't have to look at it, and so my girlfriend's like, yes, like absolutely, she picks the thing up to move it, and she turns and the whole thing exploded. And the babies came out of their little gestational sacks and are rolling around on the floor, and I'm like, instantly, like this heavy thing like turns into like major comic relief.
Yeah. It was so funny.
It was priceless. But it was like, thank you, Lord, too, because you just know what I needed.
Yeah, I needed a comic relief amongst what could have been a very triggering moment.
Yes. But my counselor too was like, Rebecca, like you don't have to go back to a crisis pregnancy center anytime in the near future. It's okay to RSVP no to this baby shower. You can be, it's like he just gave me so much permission to be kind to myself in ways that because we're business people, we're go-getters, we do things, we accomplish things. It's like I don't have to sign up for this, even though society might say otherwise. And that's just been a huge gift. It's really just permission to slow down, permission to take time for myself, permission to love myself and be honest about where I am. Even in just like, people are like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm just okay.
Yeah, not great.
I'm not great. Yeah. And I don't have to say that I'm great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just okay. And some people are going to really understand what you mean, and some people are not, but I don't owe them an explanation of what just okay means right now.
I think that trigger advice that your counselor gave you can apply to so many things, like even beyond like miscarriage or loss. And to be aware of what triggers you, it gives you like this whole new level of protection. Like what you said about baby showers, one of my friends, she had a terrible journey with infertility, and she just doesn't go to baby showers anymore. She gets invited all the time and doesn't go, and she's years outside of this journey,
right?
But it's still very
It's always a painful reminder.
It's always a painful reminder. And so what she does is she takes that friend, whoever's pregnant, out to dinner. And that's like how she replaces it. She's like, I want to celebrate you, but in a different way. I can't be around this environment.
Yes.
And I think to be like that awareness is so key and not going backwards.
I think there's a lot of empowerment that comes in that, right? Because if you think about it from a spiritual context, that the enemy uses those moments of being triggered to take us to a place that's not that Jesus wouldn't take us.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to just immediately like have this perspective shift where it's like, I don't have to fear this. I don't have to be afraid of it happening all the time. Immediately I'm overcoming anxiety. And I am,
which is not of the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm choosing to receive what God has for me in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have, so the enemy doesn't have power over me in those places anymore.
Yeah.
And that's, I think I take great pleasure in kicking him in his teeth all the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, even in my work, like I've been able to apply that philosophy of because so many of the women that we see are triggered. Just this past weekend, I was on the phone with a girl and she's like, I want to leave this program. Like, people are so mean. They're not encouraging. She's, I feel like I'm that girl back in middle school getting picked on all the time.
Mm.
And so, because I was really proud of her for being able to articulate that's the place that it was taking her back to. And I was like, but you are not that middle school girl anymore. And so if you can see that you're being triggered in that way, then what the Lord is showing you is this is a place that he intends to heal for you. And it was really revelatory even for her in those moments. She's like, okay, you know, you're right. I can see that.
And for you to use what you learned and be able to like pour that out onto someone else. Those little moments to me are more revelations into what God's purpose was for all the pain.
Right.
I mean, I hate it, but like I'll still have moments like that where a stranger on Instagram will DM me and say like, I just miscarried and I went back and read your post and it really encouraged me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, I hate that I had to miscarry, but for like one woman to feel less alone or encouraged, like there's purpose to that pain now.
Right.
It just makes it worth it in a weird way, or I don't know if worth it's the right word, but it brings
I guess
purpose
that
to it.
I'm grateful that I'm able to take what I'm learning and take the things that I'm gleaning and use them to bless other people, which is really what, like, that's the whole purpose of discipleship and mentoring and ministering with women. Is like we are imparting to others that might, you know, that are on the same journey that we're on, but just a little bit, we might be a little farther down the road. It's like, here's what I've learned from my experience. I think the transparency that we, if we're willing to be transparent about our pain, that's where the Lord is able to use it and bless other people. And I just think that that's what he needs. I think that's what he needs from us. But it's also really the exact opposite of what our society and culture teaches right now. It's like we're supposed to keep it, and especially for women, we're supposed to keep it all on the inside and everything is fine.
And move on, and the next best thing is ahead. Instead of just sitting in it.
Right. And that was, I think the other thing that sort of just came up when you were asking me, like, what I've learned from my counselor is, in talking about things, I'm like, I'm introverted already. So I just really gather my, like, energy from being still and quiet and being with my, like, kind of safest people. My husband is an extrovert to the max.
He is. He's so extroverted.
And I'm like, and I was telling my counselor, I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I literally don't want to do anything this summer. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to sign up for anything. Like I am exhausted. And you know, kind of like what I was saying earlier in terms of just really recognizing for myself all that I've been through in the last year. And it's okay for me to say, like, you know what? I'm just not doing that.
Yeah.
Right now. And so he, but I also had said, like, I needed him to help. I needed to process with my counselor sort of my desire in terms of time frames and just all the different things I was feeling, so that I could then go and like share that with my husband. And we knew, pretty immediately after we knew that we had lost Elise, that we were going to try this again. And so I'm trying to think through, like, hey, what does that look like in terms of the summer, and like, where am I emotionally, and what, just where's my head. And I think the other thing that happens with grief that he shared with my husband and I is that when a loss occurs, your brain goes through a physical process of trying to now adapt to a new normal because of the loss. And so there's a lot of your brain capacity that is focused on readjusting to life in a new kind of way. And it's so subconscious that we don't even realize that this is happening. But I get it now, kind of as he's explained it to me. So for him to sit down with my husband and say, because my husband wanted to go to Hawaii this summer, and I'm like, Hawaii sounds amazing, but I actually don't want to do that.
Yeah. Not this summer.
I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that I can't like sign up for that with you. And so for our counselor, like, to share with him, like, your wife is not the same person that she was 6 months ago. She doesn't have the same just mental and emotional capacity that she had then because of all that she's experienced. And he was saying, obviously for the husband, like, they process it differently. They're not the ones that carried the baby and felt the changes in your body and then felt the changes when the loss occurs. And so it blessed me so much, because as he explained this to David, I just heard him go, oh yeah. Like, it clicked with him immediately. Like, yeah, like, Rebecca, normally she's like, I will power through, I'll get it done. And I'm really okay saying, like, I don't want to do that right now.
And to know that that's something that is scientifically happening in your brain, it takes the pressure off of you trying to prove otherwise.
Right.
Because it's something you can rest in and be like, okay, this is how grief works.
Yes.
This is a part of the process.
Yes. And he was saying, and the reason it's important for you to recognize this, he was saying this to my husband, is because it may feel like when Rebecca says no to something, or Rebecca says, I don't want for you to sign up for that right now, it may feel like control, like I'm trying to control him, but that's not where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I'm just being really honest and aware of where I am in this season, and know this season isn't going to last forever. But yes, we're going to sort of park the car here for a little while and just be.
Yeah. And for someone to articulate that for you when you didn't know how to.
Right. Was so freeing. It felt so good to just be like, and I literally wept as he was explaining this to my husband, because I was like, yes, this is exactly how I feel, but I don't even have the words to be able to articulate to you, like, this is how I feel. And for my husband to really get it and support me in that was a huge blessing. He something had come across his email, and he emailed me. He said, is it going to feel like more work for you to sign up for this right now? And I was just emailed him back, and I was like, I hope there are other listeners that do email back and forth with
I do. I email with my husband.
But I was like, yes, and thank you for
asking.
Thank you for asking.
And being aware of that.
Right.
Yeah. And now he knows.
Right.
I think that with after a miscarriage, I think that people assume that once you get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy, that you just forget or get over it. And I still go into these, I call them shame spirals, where I get in my head, or I haven't grieved something properly, or I let something trigger me. And I don't know why I'm so emotional, or feel misunderstood. And I mean, Michael and I, the last 2 weeks, we've been butting heads, and we have a healthy baby right now, and it's still creeping up from the last 2 losses.
Yes.
And something that I've I'm teaching myself, but I don't think I've accepted yet, is what you just said, is I am allowed to be in a season that looks different when I'm such a doer. I'm such a go with my business, my marriage, with my social life. And I just don't have the energy, where Michael is doing everything right now.
Well, yeah, but that also is society on a whole. This idea that we can stop and rest is really opposite of like get after it, hustle, like make those dollars, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and because society says that, I get ashamed when I do say no, or when I do rest. And I'm like, that's not God.
Right. Because I really think that it's in those places of rest where the Lord can minister to us the most.
Yeah.
We're not distracted. We're not so busy that we miss what he's saying. We're just sitting still. And if we think too, like we're created in his image. And after 6 days of him creating the earth, like what did he do?
Rested.
He stopped and rested.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I'm real big on that message, that it's okay to be where you are. It's okay to sit in your mess for a little while. And
write that down.
Yeah. And I also think to use your voice to say what you need. I was thinking about that part on the way over here, that I don't know, it's like one of the people, I think maybe one of the questions you had is like, how can us friends, how can we help each other when losses like this occur? But I actually think that I'm recognizing for myself that certain people are just knowing my capacity, right? And knowing that my capacity is more limited than it normally is, giving myself the freedom to be like, I don't have to take that coffee, or I don't have to like plan that meeting. And that person may not understand. The person may think that I'm ignoring them, but I also think there's this little weird bit of like, I don't want to pull on her too much, and I just realizing that it's a season, but also being able to, when you're in this place of grief, being able to be honest about what you need and vocalizing it.
Yeah, express that. Like, I can't meet with you for coffee because it's just too much for me right now. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
But this is what I need.
Right.
And if they're a true friend, and if they love you, then they'll be like, okay, whatever you need,
Right. To me, that's a big part of just the awareness of what do we need, and then being able to like feel secure enough to vocalize that. Was just something I was thinking about on the way over here, because I can think of several people that are like, oh, I really want to get together with you and talk about what we do, and I'm like, okay, and I want to make that happen, but also like if I don't, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, exactly. My business coach, who I love, sent me this. I think I told you this, like homework to do something fun. I'll wrap it up soon, but she was like, go to a museum, or go bowl, or meet with an older person in your community for coffee and learn something. And the more I process that, which this was just on Thursday, but I'm thinking fun for me right now is, yes, alone for sure. And also sometimes it's just shutting my brain off and watching like an old episode of Grey's Anatomy and being lazy.
Sure.
And that's in this season for me, which I am an extrovert. I love to meet with people, but I'm in an introverted season. So it's okay for me to say, hey, I had fun watching season 3, episode 4 of Grey's Anatomy, because it was comforting for me to not put any more pressure on my schedule.
Exactly. And I think the other thing too that I was thinking about, just in terms of our friendship together, was how I think when we lost Elise, and to see baby Binko growing like that's an awkward place for both of us, you know, because it's like, I'm being honest about it being hard for me to watch your belly grow.
Yeah.
And you're probably thinking like, I'm sure it's hard for her to be in this place. So let's just put that on the table and acknowledge that's there, but we love each other.
Yeah.
And so hey, there's this, you know, and I think for friends too, it's in the unspoken places where the enemy can attack us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
because it's not brought to light.
Right. So to be able to say, you know, Catherine, like, I love you. This is hard for me, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and that, I think, I don't know, you can tell me, but I feel like that took pressure off of you.
And I think I totally understand, because when I was losing my babies, I couldn't hang out with people who were pregnant.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Yes.
And so for that just to be out on the table, and like, I train Rebecca 3 times a week, but if you were to ever text me and be like, I'm not having a morning where I want to see your belly, I'm not coming, I wouldn't be offended by that, because it's been on the table.
Right. I think that, and so I text you like when we were gone, I was like, I think that as friends, it's good to have this conversation. And it's good to put it out there that as women, like, we can support each other. People don't talk about it enough.
Yeah, and sometimes supporting someone is supporting them with a distance, if that's what that person needs.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you have to be hanging out with someone 24/7 to give them comfort. Sometimes comfort is letting them sit in it how they need to.
I guess this is just a topic that affects women in a much greater capacity than we really talk about. It affects friendships. So many things, because our heart is so deeply involved in it all. Yeah, and I just think there should be more light shown on it.
Yeah. I have questions that I ask every single guest, but since I've already asked you these, I'm going to just change 2 of them. Okay. So I'm asking you 2. Usually it's 4, but one of the questions is, what do you love about yourself? But I'm going to shift it to, what have you learned about yourself since losing Elise that you're learning to love? Because it's a new you, right? You're processing differently.
Yeah. Probably my body right now, honestly, because I just, with IVF, like, you pump yourself full of so many hormones. I mean, I don't know how many shots total I gave myself.
A lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Even I know that, and I wasn't doing.
Yeah. And so I'm heavier now than I've ever been, and not that I know that I'm not overweight, but it's just, I'm having to adjust to your body having gone through all of those changes, and I don't have anything to show for it.
Yeah, and you went through an emotional loss, and then you have to see it physically.
Right.
As a reminder, and that's frustrating.
Yes.
Or experience it physically.
Yes. And I think I woke up at 1:30 this morning.
I was probably awake. You could have texted me.
And I literally had a moment where I was like, man, like, I can feel my body coming down and probably normalizing somewhat. And I thought, like, at 1:30 this morning, like, do I really want to do this, like, right away again?
Right, like, I want to feel like myself again. I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, I'm still wrestling with that one, because, like, on one hand, like, yes, but on the other hand, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're not just surrendering, like, your time and your emotions, but you're surrendering, like, your whole body to this experience.
Yes, and I don't know that I've fully processed that. I've had friends say, like, Rebecca, I've watched what you've done to yourself, you know, in the last year, and I think it's amazing. You know, like, you've already sacrificed your body for this little baby who, is in heaven, and the idea of, like, doing all of that all over again, I don't know. I need to go home and process that.
Yeah.
That was
Speaking of processing.
Yes. What's question 2?
Last question is, if you could leave our listeners with one little piece of truth today for them to end on, one little word of wisdom, what would it be?
That your voice matters.
drop the mic.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to speak up and say what you need, because it matters. You're important, and even if it's, I would say, don't fear rejection. Don't fear whatever it is, because in that place, when you begin to exercise your voice, your self-worth comes into line with the way God intended it to be,
and you feel empowered in your identity in Christ. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your story. Yes. I know it couldn't have been easy, but I know it probably blessed a lot of people listening.
I love you.
Love you too. And listeners, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Whoa!